Hey everyone, welcome to Food Talk Live. A reminder that this episode will also appear on Food Tank's podcast, Food Talk with Dani Nierenberg. So please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Today I get to chat with Holly Rippon-Butler, the Land Access Program Manager at the National Young Farmers Coalition. And before I introduce her a little bit more, this is one of my favorite organizations in the world. They're doing incredible work. Please go check them out at youngfarmers.org. So Holly works with her parents on their multi-generational family dairy farm in upstate New York, near Saratoga Springs. And the National Young Farmers Coalition is a national nonprofit advocacy network of young farmers fighting for the future of agriculture. And they work to change policy, build networks, and provide business services to ensure that young farmers have a chance to succeed. I'm really honored that Food Tank has had the opportunity to work with the National Young Farmers Coalition over the last several years. Again, one of my favorite organizations. Please check them out. Thanks so much for joining me, Holly. I know it's a really crazy time for the coalition and so many farmers. Before we start, I just want to make sure you and your family and your colleagues are all feeling okay and staying safe and healthy.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on and for all the work that you all do to get the message out about these issues that farmers and food producers are facing. Yeah, and thank you for asking. We are healthy and safe and feeling really grateful to be here with our community right in this moment.
That's awesome. That's great. I'm so glad. So I kind of just want to dive right in. There's so much to kind of unpack here. And it's, it's a tenuous time for young farmers. It's a tenuous time for really farmers of all sizes, whether they're large or small. And I'm, wondering how the coalition is helping, the young farmers that you work with deal with, their markets closing, their farmers markets closing, the restaurants that they provide to closing. What kinds of things are sort of happening as you watch this crisis unfold?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, like everyone, farmers are experiencing a lot of uncertainty in this moment, and I think we want to just highlight and acknowledge that there is a lot of fast-moving headlines and legislation, as well as impacts on the ground that farmers are feeling. As a coalition, the National Young Farmers Coalition has been around since 2010. We were founded by young farmers, and we're a grassroots advocacy network representing the next generation of farmers in the U.S. And we believe that we can change a food system. We can change one that is in crisis, and that change will be powered in part by young farmer leaders who are growing food for their communities, caring for the earth, and really grounded in the realities of farming and the day-to-day of it. So we are, along with many other organizations that work with farmers and food producers, we are continuing to do the work that we've always done in one sense, and just shifting up a gear in some ways. And so we are continuing to listen to farmers. We've built this network of young farmers and ranchers around the country that is really represented through our chapter network. We've got about 45 chapters now, and we are surveying farmers in our network. We are trying to understand the impacts that they're feeling through that survey. We've been helping farmers facilitate chapter meetings, and we've had over 20 meetings virtually with over 200 farmers on some of the calls. And we're also running a phone bank where we're just calling our members and checking in on them, and we're hoping to reach over 5,000 farmers that way, just asking them what's going on in your communities. So that's, the foundation of our work is listening to our members. We're continuing to do that. But beyond that, we know it's a moment for action, and particularly in policy. So we are.
But before we get into that, Holly, can you tell me what you're hearing from some of these farmers you're calling? What are, I imagine they're scared. They're scared financially. They're scared about their own health. What are you hearing from them?
Yeah, so, through surveys and phone calls and our connections, we're hearing that there's just a lot of stress and
Yeah.
uncertainty. New and beginning farmers are typically taking on a lot of risk and starting their businesses, and this moment is really no different in exacerbating a lot of the precarity that they
Hmm.
feel. Um, we're hearing a lot of concerns about reduced sales outlets with restaurants closing and farmers markets going offline in some cases. Some cases farmers markets are staying open. I think one thing to stress is that the impacts are very individual and are felt very differently based on region and farm. But we are seeing a lot of reduced outlets to sell products at.
Yeah.
We're seeing just the stress of added caretaking costs, lack of locally available support resources, such as like veterinarian services or
Mhm.
mechanics, or disruption to planned projects. If you were working on building a barn and are now not sure if you're going to have the labor or the supplies for that.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think just some added costs of implementing these alternative sales strategies. Farmers are trying to make the rapid switch if they didn't have a way to sell online or to sell without having a lot of contact with consumers, trying to make that switch. And yeah, we're just seeing a lot of farmers who depended on off-farm work, often in the restaurant industry.
Right.
That has really evaporated overnight. So yeah, I think I want to definitely say that it's individual and it varies a lot, but some of the themes that we're seeing are just sudden loss of income,
Yeah.
uncertainty how they'll keep workers on board, uncertainty about H2A and
Hmm.
work, and for farm workers and those on the front lines in that way as well. There's just some added vulnerabilities and challenges that they're facing
Yeah.
in terms of just like extra um, costs of transportation or
Sure.
caretaking, and also uncertainty about what access they'll have to resources.
Well, and it's, young farmers were already facing a lot of challenges, which the coalition has been, really good about bringing to light. They face lack of, healthcare often. They face, student loan debt. They don't have, sometimes the mentorship or the business skills that they need. They're taking a lot of financial risks. They don't often own their own land. So it's on top of all of those things that they have these added stresses. So now I hope you can talk about some of the policy work that the National Young Farmers Coalition has done over many years now, but what you're really focused on now in terms of COVID-19.
Yeah, definitely. So we are, a couple of things that we do beyond listening to farmers and helping them connect in the chapters are the state and federal policy work, and that's led by our members in many cases, and our staff are here to support them having a voice. So we're ramping that up and doing that now. We're helping just make sure that farmers' voices are heard as these relief stimulus packages are moving in Congress. So we've got a campaign where farmers can email and get in touch with their representatives, and we've seen thousands of actions taken there to
Mm-hmm.
make sure their voices are heard. We're really closely following these relief bills that are being passed. The CARES Act is a recent one in DC, and making sure that farmers' needs are heard. We were in particular trying to partner and lift up the voices of vulnerable and secure populations like farm
Sure.
workers, and making sure that they're included and that we're lifting up the great work that other organizations like Rural Co and United Farm Workers and their National Sustainable Ag Coalition. There's a huge network of amazing advocacy organizations out there. So we're doing that, and then making sure that we're helping farmers just navigate the regulations that are coming out. So
Yeah.
there's particularly a lot of uncertainty right now about small business loans that were
Nice.
made available, and if farmers can be eligible. And the information we have about that is changing all the time, and we're going to update our network as soon as we have some clarity and know more about what farmers can access in terms of disaster loan funds. We're
Sure.
trying to track what's happening through Farm Service Agency for farmers who are worried about what is happening with their loans and their ability to get operating or farm purchase assistance through that network.
Hmm.
And we're trying to just help farmers navigate all that. There's been a lot of resources flying around as well as policy, and we have a resource library on our website, and we're keeping our blog up to date as these pieces move. We're also seeing some student loan debt is a big issue for our membership, and
Absolutely.
we were we were glad to see the CARES Act include suspension of payments and interest on federal student loans until the end of September. But that's another issue that we're tracking. And certainly think that Congress has more work to do. As I mentioned, there's big concern right now that undocumented farm workers are not included in this relief
Absolutely.
bill, and there's concern about food access funding, and just a number of other things that we're trying to track through policy.
Yeah, again a lot to unpack, and for farmers who are trying to plant this time of year and trying to make sure that their animals are well taken care of. This is just one more added stress to like figure out how to go through all this paperwork. So again, having a resource like the National Young Farmers Coalition, youngfarmers.org, everyone go there. I think is so valuable. Well, in addition to this crisis, what are some of the other pieces of work that you've been, I know there's a big report that you're planning on releasing later this year. What are some of the actions that we can look forward to seeing from the National Young Farmers Coalition?
Well, yeah, as I said, in many ways our work continues, and this moment it really highlights the need for support of our local food producers and our local food infrastructure and systems, and the whole network of people that make it possible to get food on our tables. So we're continuing our work in chapter organizing and supporting new chapters of farmers as they want to get started around the country. And right now we're doing a lot of just making Zoom technology available to them so that they can talk with their networks, but we'll keep supporting those chapters. And in our policy work, we will keep supporting farmers on their state and federal level, at the state and federal levels. We are going to keep tracking the legislation going through Congress, but we're also, we're going to keep working on Farm Bill implementation. That's going
Mm-hmm.
on in the background. We have, we're trying to share information with our network about what the appropriations process means, how all that money that got mentioned in the Farm Bill gets to farmers. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're tracking that. We're writing comments on federal programs around conservation and land access, making sure that issue continues to stay front of mind for politicians in DC. We're working on providing business services to farmers as well. We've got a lot of resources on food safety that we've already published, and a guide
Absolutely.
to the Farm Service Agency loan programs. And we'll keep providing that and being a resource to farmers in those ways.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the food safety, sort of requirements and resources that you have on your website. I mean, I think a lot of young farmers go into farming very passionate about, the idea of farming, but they're not always as well equipped to handle these requirements or handle the business side. So again, that's why your organization is so important, because you're able to connect them to those resources that they need to do their jobs better and actually make a living off of it and be able to do um, you know all the things that farming provides. I think there's a lot of us who forget that farmers are more than food producers. They're stewarding biodiversity, they're stewarding the land, they're great business people when they have the resources to do so. So it's a lot of intricacies that we forget when we hear about farmers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, and I think good to acknowledge that farmers are, the changes that, we're asking for right now are really hard to be instantaneous. It's important to recognize that it takes years to get young farmers to have the training that they need to
Yeah.
run farm businesses, and to have the local food systems in place to get food to people, and to have the infrastructure to process local food. So
Mm-hmm.
I think, this moment is hopefully really showing us the skills and the networks that exist, and the possibilities there, and also the gaps, and where we need to make long-term investments in
Mm-hmm.
young farmers as a resource for this country. And,
Absolutely.
thinking about, really, I think there's also an angle to this that's important. That's like, we're in a moment of, there's real possibility here to invest in our local food systems, invest in
Mm-hmm.
farmers, make immigration changes, to make healthcare changes. A lot of farmers we're already struggling with healthcare, and now I think that's become part of the conversation nationally,
Absolutely.
of course. So yeah, I think, there's just a lot to say about both the work that farmers already do, and the opportunity to invest in that more.
Yeah, there are some real bright spots that could come out of this crisis. People understanding how important food and farm workers and farmers themselves are, and understanding the challenges they face. And if farmers get sick, or if grocery store workers get sick, then we don't have the kind of food that we want. And so really realizing that importance, I think a lot more people are interested in agriculture over the last few weeks than they ever have been. You see this rush to buy seeds, and get chicken coops built in backyards. So I think despite all of this chaos, there could be some really positive things that come out of all of us going through this crisis at the same time. You mentioned before, that a lot of small farmers are not equipped to sell online. They haven't had, websites. They've been mostly selling at markets. Do you think that young farmers, because they've grown up more with technology, have sort of an advantage over, older farmers in that respect, that they can get a website up, that they can handle the sort of challenges it takes to sell online? Or is it the same for all farmers?
Well, yeah, right. Hard to draw a blanket statement around that. And I think one thing that stands out for me, besides personal skills around technology, is just the lack of internet access in some rural areas. And so whether or not, you understand the systems that could be put in place for you, just having the ability to have a stable internet connection
Right.
can be a huge challenge for a lot of people in rural areas. And so I think, highlighting that is important. And also that there's um, there's a lot of focus on on using new online systems. And I think they're very important for farmers in this moment, and helping them connect with consumers. But we also want to acknowledge that technology won't be the answer, that we need
Right.
to,
Not a panacea, for sure.
we need to support the success and the viability of having a farm business at its core, which, starts with the ability to access land, and have land that's available for farmers in this country. And we need, I think, really broad and bold policy changes to make that happen. And that starts with ensuring that we have equitable access to that land, and that farmers who have been left out of the ability to have the security of land access have it. And I know I'm not entirely answering your question, but I
No, no,
think,
it's okay.
there's, we are, so I just want to say that about technology, that there's some barriers to entry for that. And also that we want to make sure we're keeping in mind the underlying challenges. But we have seen a couple really exciting kind of stories of our chapters and network coming together to
Mm-hmm.
use to find new ways to sell. And I think also something that, I want to say in terms of the generational gap is that there's so much respect for the farmers that have come before this young generation, and really just appreciation for the work that they have all done for,
Absolutely.
decades to get food to people without without the internet.
Right, right.
And I think, in particular, the like the CSA model that is getting so much press time now, that's come out of the Black farming community and research
Yeah.
at Tuskegee University, and I think that's also really important to acknowledge. But yeah, we are seeing our network really engage with it. And for example, our Four Corners chapter in Colorado is working together to develop a regional website that includes a
Nice.
map and directory of producers. That's something that a group of us are working on here at the Upper Hudson chapter in upstate New York. And yeah, we're also seeing some farmers in New Mexico came together to launch a CSA called Better Together CSA from the Rio Grande
Nice.
Farmers Coalition. So they are offering, just a pilot project of combining their farms together, and having availability for payment through EBT. And their CSA hit capacity within 5 hours of putting it online. So I think, yeah, we are seeing farmers make that pivot, but lots of nuance and context around that I want to point out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to sort of, how we began this conversation when I introduced you. You're the Land Access Program Manager. And we've been talking a lot about how farmers don't have access to land. And I just want to make sure that our viewers understand this problem and sort of this conundrum that young farmers face. And that's because land, especially in places like where you live, is very expensive, right? It's hard for farmers to buy their own land. They end up leasing plots or renting plots. Can you go into that a little bit more so people have an understanding of how sort of tenuous the situation is for farmers who are young and starting out, or new farmers, because they have to sort of cobble together an acre here and an acre over there?
Yeah, yeah. So in our 2017 survey of young farmers around the country, we asked them, what are your key challenges? And land access was the very top of the list. And that was a challenge for both first generation farmers as well as those who've grown up on farms. It was a challenge for farmers in every region. And it was the top reason that people who had to leave agriculture were telling us, they had to quit. And
Yeah.
the top barrier to getting started for those who were aspiring to farm. So land is really a central challenge, and it's connected to so many other challenges. And I could talk for so long about this, and I'm I am writing a paper about this right now that we're going to publish soon, and that will be something where we get a chance to kind of go into all the nuances of this challenge. But the key points are that land is the top barrier that farmers are facing. Some of the particulars of that are that they just can't find land that's coming on the market for sale.
Right.
It's really difficult to, if you're new to a community, a farming community, or you're new to this industry, to really get connected. And a lot of land changes hands without ever coming on the market. So just finding land is really hard. But the other big challenge for young producers and really all farmers is that we're not valuing farmland in this country for its use for food production. There's
Right.
no, and in some cases it is being sold to farmers, and that's happening, but there's very little policy or really systems in place that ensure that we're valuing this resource in that way. And so farmers are having to compete with non-farm buyers, with developers, with people looking for second home properties, with people who are well-intentioned and want to maybe lease it to a farmer, but
Mm-hmm.
they are going to and that can still create a lot of barriers of insecurity for farmers, because leasing is tenuous in many cases, although can be a good way for farmers to get started. So,
Sure.
there's a lot there, but the basic challenge is that often you look at your business plan as a farmer and you go to a bank and say, okay, can I take a loan to get this property? And the two just don't match up, and
Yeah.
you're not able to compete with the prices that are on the market. There's a lot of additional challenges related to land, particularly for farmers of color and indigenous farmers that have faced, you know, hundreds of years of discrimination and dispossession of land, and the
Mm-hmm.
ongoing inequality in access to financing and land. And so, we want to definitely highlight that these challenges are not faced equally by everyone. And if we want to create a just food system where we have food sovereignty, the ability to feed ourselves, the ability to have strong local communities, and this will, we're seeing, of course, impact us all. We want to create the ability to afford farmland as a farmer, a working farmer,
Absolutely.
to have the security you need to make investments in your business.
Sure. I mean, yeah. So again, I just want to point out that, in addition to the COVID-19 crisis, farmers face so many challenges, and especially young and new farmers, and remembering that and seeking out, local sources of food is really going to be helpful for the farmers in your community right now. Um, Holly, I want to ask you, what's your advice to the eaters who are listening to this or viewing us today? What advice do you have for them about helping support young farmers?
Well, I think, first listen to them, find out what their needs and challenges are in your community. What we can do is give the big picture and some of the underlying challenges that a lot of farmers face. But what will be important is listening to the farmers where you are, and connecting with groups that represent them or talking to them directly, and doing what you can to support that kind of security for farmers right now in planning. CSAs are one way. If you're able to invest in, kind of make that investment in the farmer and in their season, because right now they're doing a lot of planning and planting, and
Right.
if they have livestock, they have these kind of other challenges of it takes many years in some cases to raise an animal that is ready for meat. So they're in this real uncertainty. So anything you can do to invest in the security of farmers, support your local food infrastructure by buying at local outlets. And I think, if you have opportunities, if you're able to increase food access for others through donating to local food pantries that are doing a lot of this work to try to bring food to people who are food insecure right now. There's some really great efforts that I've seen, particularly one in the Adirondacks. ADK Action is working with a local food hub to connect, to buy produce from farmers and then make food boxes available to
That's great.
food insecure families. So things like that, if you are able to support those efforts, I think that's really important right now. And finding ways to be a partner in creating long-term security for farmers.
That's great. I know as part of a coalition that works to do very positive things, this can be a very sort of draining time for you. I'm wondering what keeps you and your colleagues at the National Young Farmers Coalition sort of inspired to keep doing this work despite sort of all the chaos.
Oh, it's the farmers, 100%. The people in our membership who we're hearing from every day, who are going out there and stocking their farm stores or planting seeds or milking cows or, tending to their crops, and just seeing the dedication that they have. They are not missing a day of work. And so we are here for them to keep doing what we can to ensure their voices are heard in policy, and that they have the resources they need to get organized and support themselves and their communities.
That's amazing. That farmers are the most inspiring people in the world. So I'm so glad that you continue to do this work. If you want more information about the National Young Farmers Coalition, please go to youngfarmers.org. Thanks so much to Holly and all of our viewers. A reminder that this episode will also be aired on our podcast, Food Talk with Dani Nierenberg, and you can find more information about the podcast and the National Young Farmers Coalition also at foodtank.com. A reminder that later today we'll be interviewing Mike Curtin of DC Central Kitchen at 5 p.m. Eastern. Everyone, please stay well. Thank you again, Holly.
Yeah, thanks for having me.